So it picks up, this is an excerpt, and I'll just sort of pick up and say that it starts off, I was coming home from high school basketball practice, and I was the youngest player on the team, and at the time I was 14, and already there had been some very serious indicators of serious mental health problems, although of course nobody outside our house really knew it. So I'll start off here, just sort of coming in from a tough workout. And as I anticipated, my mother is not in her darkened bedroom. She responds not at all to my greeting. I can detect movement behind the closed bathroom door down the hall. And based on recent experience, I presume she is sequestered behind this door. As I have done several times before, I silently approach and try to slowly turn the doorknob, hoping that my maneuver won't be detected. With the gentlest of attempts, I can confirm that the door is indeed locked, which bodes poorly. Standing in the hallway, I feel ever so lonely and afraid. After a minute passes, I step back from the door and call out, "Mom!" And I hear my mother's voice, but it is garbled and shaky, a mixture of groaning, crying, and whimpering. "I'm going to kill myself," she shrieks. "I have razor blades, and I'm going to slit my wrists." While this is not the first time I've heard this claim, it never fails to elicit a painful sense of desperation and despair. It never fails to elicit a painful sense of desperation and despair in me. After a minute of silence, she adds more threats and ends by saying mournfully, "I don't care anymore. I just don't give a shit." I am just 14, standing outside the bathroom door, the locked bathroom door, dealing with a crisis, coping with trauma, and dealing with no immediate help or support from anyone. As I stand there, fear and terror engulf me. At this point, it is not enough. I can feel hunger pains, since it is almost past the dinner hour, and I am famished. So I'm just going to add that the next little section relates to the point in time when my dad died. He had surgery and died on the operating table in Philadelphia. And at that point, I was in trouble myself. I am sure that I did not process all that was happening upon my father's death. And indeed, I had little or no capacity to deal with my feelings of sadness and loss. I suddenly incorporated a new identity, a 12-year-old boy without a father. The funeral was awful, and my mother was out of control with grief and despair, sobbing and frantically hanging on to me. My youngest sister, who was sent to stay with family friends before the fateful trip down to Philadelphia, before that trip commenced, now came home. And being together in Rocco, it was a step towards normalcy. But neither of us seemed capable of communicating our grief and feelings or providing any real comfort to one another. Those days of late November and December were excruciating and wrenching. To this day, I confess that my greatest embarrassment or source of anguish or bewilderment came when I finally forced to return to school. No one, not another friend or student or teacher, said a word about my father's death. The silence was deafening. No one had the tools to deal with such a shocking turn of events. But at this moment, now we move 2 years forward, here I am standing outside, alone outside the upstairs bathroom door with my mother moaning and crying and saying crazy things. While this scenario is not new, it seems different in intensity. As in the recent past, I offer well-meaning, but probably meaningless platitudes telling her that things will be better or all right, and she will feel better soon. Within minutes, and out of frustration, however, I tell her in an unsympathetic voice to pull herself together, or I will call someone. But I know, and probably she knows too, that no one nearby can help. Her mother, my dear grandmother, lives in Brooklyn, but is unknowing and unprepared to deal with this crisis. Besides, she would have no idea how to travel all the way to Rockaway on her own, since she rarely ventures beyond the confines of her Bensonhurst, Brooklyn neighborhood. I dismissed the fleeting notion of calling the police for no other reason than because I would feel like a traitor to my mother. I am handcuffed with indecision. I am not sure what is worse, being scared and overwhelmed by my mother's threats to slit her wrists, or my inability to know what to do, or in fact, that I am starved and exhausted. Then in one of those defining moments, I happen upon or stumble upon a new approach. Rather than try to offer meaningless platitudes or move to a more aggressive or threatening posture, I turn to humor, even if it might be dark humor. I don't know it yet, but relying on humor, funny humor, dark humor, self-deprecating humor, and perhaps humor of the absurd, would become part of my psyche and my persona in the decades to come. Leaning up against the door, I say the following words to my mother. Mom, I'm really starved. Can't you come down and make dinner and then kill yourself? And if you want to find out how things unfold,